Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the Improvement Podcast. So hope everyone's week's went well so far. Mine's myself has went pretty good for the most part. I'm back into pretty much training productively again, so I don't want to hammer on about it because I've mentioned it a few times on both my Instagram and last podcast I believe, but I've had exertion headaches again, just headaches that get set off during training and they don't go away unless you rest. To summarise, and it looks like I'm eventually going to be able to train to failure on everything again, not have to hold myself back and avoid certain exercises, which is really, really good because not to cry my sorrows out on the podcast, but training's a big part of my day and it's something that I'm really passionate about and something I want to pursue because I want to obviously compete in bodybuilding next year. So obviously if I can't train, I'm not going to progress, and as I said, it's a big part of my life and also impacts like my success in my business as well at the end of the day, because you obviously want to be able to walk the walk and show that you can make progress yourself if you're wanting to do the same with other individuals. So enough on that front. Hope everyone's well. Jumping into the podcast, today I'm going to touch on macros or macronutrients. So macronutrients are protein, fats and carbohydrates. They're the three macronutrients and they basically make up our diet. So I'm going to jump into what all three are and also tell you how much calories are in each and also what we should do in terms of how to ensure we're getting a sufficient amount of each, because if not, then we might not make as much progress as we potentially could. So to start off, first of all, is protein. So protein's quite common. People talk about it a lot. You usually just try and aim for high amounts of protein if you start the gym for whatever reason, because people just have a rough idea it's good for growing muscles, which is. So protein is involved in the growth and repair of just all your cells in your body. So that means just, your body as a whole. And part of that's your muscles. So if you want to obviously grow your muscles and recover from your training, it's ideal to have a sufficient amount of protein, or in other words, enough protein, which I'll get to. And as well as that, it plays a part in your immune system health and a few other functions, but the main one is just your growth and repair of your muscle tissue and other tissues in your body. So if you are wanting to have enough protein, you should aim for about 2 grams per kilogram. So that means if you weigh 80 kilos, then you should have about 160 grams of protein. Testing my maths there. So in terms of how to achieve this, I know it sounds straightforward, but just when you're eating throughout the day, instead of eating, let's say for your breakfast, you have 1 egg and 2 bits of toast, instead have 2 eggs and 2 bits of toast, or 2 eggs and 1 bit of toast. So literally just eat more of the foods that have protein in it. So a lot of people think, I need to add an extra protein source or I need to find another food high in protein when you're trying to consume more. But you can just eat more of the food you're currently eating. For example, if I eat 100 grams of chicken, I might get something like 25 grams of protein. Or if I eat 150, I might get something like 40 grams of protein, if that makes sense. So just simply increasing the amount of food you're eating that has protein in it. So if you aren't sure what foods have protein in it, what I'd recommend is just search up foods high in protein, and it will basically tell you a rundown of all foods high in protein. So I could list them all up, but it's pointless me listing foods with protein in it if you don't enjoy them. So just search up, see what you like, include it in your diet, and without getting carried away, if you want to make sure you're maximizing your progress or just trying to just take a step up with your training, then have quite a few protein servings a day. So let's say you're currently only having 3 meals. Add 2 protein shakes in there. Bear in mind that will make your calorie intake higher, but having more protein servings throughout the day just basically helps you recover better and grow and repair your muscles better, as that's what the function of it is. So we need to bear in mind when doing this is we can't just eat protein all the time. So it's not like we can just keep sipping on a protein shake throughout the day and then we'll be massive. It doesn't work like that. We need to take time away from consuming protein. So what I mean by this is we need to wait like 2 hours in between protein servings for what's called muscle protein synthesis to like lower. So what that basically means is when we have protein, muscle protein synthesis goes up, so we basically spike it, and it needs to drop again before spiking it again. If we keep consuming protein in a short space of time, let's say we consume it every 30 minutes, then it will just slowly lower and we won't boost it. And when basically we boost it, we put ourselves in a good place to recover and grow muscle, to put simple. So hopefully you got the grasp of that. And next up is, I forgot to touch on. So in protein, there's 4 calories per gram. So protein is one of the lowest calorie macronutrients along with carbs. I'll get to fats in a second. Moving on to fats. The role of fats is just to aid the nutrient absorption, and also it does play a part in your hormonal health, and it is also a source of energy, although it's not the best source of energy. So in fat we have 9 calories per gram, so that means if you have 10 grams of fat, you're having 90 calories. So that shows it's a bit higher than how much calories are in protein and carbs. So what this means is if you're dieting, you probably don't want to have an absolute ton of fats, because if you have a ton of fats, then you'll most likely eat lower food because there's more calories in each gram of it, if that makes sense. So a good example is like if you just look at any fatty foods with a lot of fat in it, most of the time it's high in calories. So not that you should avoid fats. Fats are definitely important, but we should try and keep them to a minimum. And at the end of the podcast, I'll touch on what I think like minimum amount you should be consuming is, if that makes sense. But foods you get fats from are like some cuts of meat. I get mine from coconut oil. Dark chocolate has fats in it. Eggs, the yolk has fat in it. Which doesn't mean you shouldn't include those, or you shouldn't mean you shouldn't eat the yolk, because fats again are very beneficial, because if we're eating all like the nutrients we need in our diet, if we're eating a great diet but we're eating no fats, then we won't absorb the nutrients. So there's no good making sure your diet's perfect, like, and you're having tons of vitamins and minerals if you're not having fats, if that makes sense. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot in that aspect. So next up is carbohydrates. So carbohydrates are our body's main source of energy. So I did just touch on the fact that fats are a source of energy. So basically what our body does is it uses carbohydrates for energy, but if there's no carbohydrates available, it will go to use fat, because carbohydrates are preferred. You don't really have to like break them down as much, to put it simple, and it's easier and better to utilise, if that makes sense. Whereas fats we need to basically turn into carbs if we want to use it for energy. So just to touch on as well, touching on fats there. Fats aren't the same as fat in your body. So it doesn't mean if you eat fat, it'll turn to fat. You'll gain fat if you have more calories in your burning, if you're in a calorie surplus. But you could eat all your diet from fat and still not gain weight. So it just depends if you're eating too much or too little calories, if you gain weight or lose weight. Just to clarify. So, sorry, I'm jumping about here a bit, but back onto carbs. So, like I said, it's our main energy source. We also store it as energy. So just because you put carbs in you at 9 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean you're just going to burn through them rapid and they won't be in your body later in the day. So saying that, it is good to have them around your session if it's our body's main source of energy. So yes, we won't burn through them like straight away if we have them, but it's still quite beneficial to have them around your session, just so you perform well and you recover. So you don't have to overcomplicate this, just basically eat foods that have carbs in them. So this could be things like rice, could be oats, a banana, apple, other fruit, and things, what have I even touched on? Yeah, pasta as well. They're all sources of carbohydrates. And like I said, they're used for energy. They're also protein sparing. And what I mean by protein sparing is we don't need as much protein if we're eating a ton of carbs. So obviously a ton of carbs is dependent on the individual. For example, someone who weighs, let's say a female who weighs 50 kilos, her carbohydrate intake being high is going to be different for a male that is 100 kilos and has high amounts of carbohydrates. So they'll be independent for the individual, but for the most part, if you're eating a ton of carbs and a lot of carbs in your diet, you're not going to need as much protein because it's protein sparing. So like I was saying about the other two macronutrients, there's 4 calories in each gram of carbs. So that means your protein and carbs are 4 calories per gram, and then your fats are 9 calories per gram, so just a bit above double the amount of calories that you have. And yeah, like I said, what this means is you should try and maybe have not the minimum, but you shouldn't have your fat super high if you're trying to lose body fat, because we don't want to have a lot of foods that are calorie dense. What calorie dense means is just basically really, really easy to eat, small in size but high in calories. So a good example is like dark chocolate. So it's got quite a lot of calories in it for how big it is. Whereas if we take something like a salad, we could have a massive bowl of salad and it won't be 500 calories. Whereas we could have something really small, like a cake, some really small wee dessert, and it might come to 500 calories. So, and the salads will be more filling. So that's why we should aim for foods that are like high in size, big but low in calories. So next up is my recommendations. So if you're a beginner starting out, this is who this is aimed towards. I'd recommend having 2 grams per kilogram of protein. So the reason we want 2 grams per kilogram is just so we're consuming enough protein so we recover and grow our muscles effectively, while also ensuring we're having enough for the other functions of protein. One, like I said, is our immune health, and there's some others, but don't really need to touch on them now. The main one's growth and repair. And as for your other two, if you're eating a balanced diet, you're probably going to have a decent amount of fats and carbs anyway. And what I mean by a decent amount is, most of the time, unless someone's got like a really strange diet, their fats and carbs will fall in a range that's suitable. So we don't really want to be consuming hundreds of fats, like I said, if we're dieting, because it's all waste of calories, if that makes sense. And you can use them for eating carbs, which is better for energy. So saying that, you could have a wee glance at what you're currently eating for your fats if you use MyFitnessPal or any other calorie tracking app, but for the most part, you don't have to worry about it unless you're eating like a really strange diet, basically. But if you eat just balanced meals, then you're gonna be having enough fats and carbs, most likely. That's what I find with my clients. So I don't even give them like a fats and carbs goal, because if I give them like a protein goal and they're eating a relatively suitable diet, unless they try and do otherwise, they're having plenty of each, and I don't really need to give them a goal. So if I give them a goal, then it will just cause unnecessary stress them trying to hit it and get in a certain range, when I'd rather just make it a bit more sustainable and only give them a protein goal. So if you want to ensure you're having enough fats, what I'd recommend is make sure you're having at least 0.3 grams per kilogram. So that means if you're 100 kilos, you should at least have 30 grams at the very, very minimum. So probably 0.4 grams is something you should aim for at least. But the very, very least you should have is 0.3 grams. The rest you should probably get from carbs. But saying this, don't stress about it. As long as you're hitting your protein and you're having the right amount of calories for you, then you're sorted. So as for just having some take homes for the episode, eat 2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. So that means if you weigh 50 kilos, 2 grams per kilogram. So if you're 50 kilogram, then eat at least 100 grams of protein, and eat, as well as that, your like fats and carbs you don't really have to worry about. If you're eating a balanced diet, you'll get enough of each in. Just don't avoid any, really. And also make sure you're eating your 5 a day carbs around your session. So carbohydrates, so things like toast, obviously bread, which is toast, and rice, maybe oats, maybe an isotonic drink if you're out and about and you're not home. Wee things like that. Or you can also look up carbs if you want some ideas of what you can eat before your sessions. Or just like a banana and a protein shake, just wee things like that. Because carbs have energy in them basically, or give us energy, and we use it for energy. And after, make sure you have carbs as well, and also salt your meals. So salt is very, very important. I've touched on that on setting up a beginner's diet episode, I believe. But basically, salt is very important for hydration and energy levels and a few more things. So yeah, if you are doing those things, then you're probably going to be pretty sorted for your diet and you don't really have to worry about it. And yeah, for the most part, just make sure you're eating relatively healthy. I don't have to explain what healthy is. We can all distinguish what's better between a chocolate bar and a piece of cake, if that makes sense. So yes, you can have nice things, but have them in moderation, eh? And yeah, just follow those guidelines and you should be pretty much sorted. If anyone's got any questions about the macros I've covered or anything else related, just drop me a message on Instagram or whatever other platform you have me on. So yeah, hope you all enjoyed the video or podcast if you're listening to it on Spotify or iTunes. And yeah, if you're on Spotify, give me a follow. If you're on iTunes, leave me a rating and review if you don't mind. If you're on YouTube, like and subscribe, and hope you all enjoyed as usual. Cheers.